Since I put out day 2 of Ethan Crumbley's Miller hearing yesterday, I figured that I would just summarize day 1 for you guys because there was a lot of important information that was discussed. And to be quite honest, I don't feel like uploading another 7-hour video. So let me start out by telling you Ethan Crumbley is now 16. He arrived in court on Thursday for the hearing on whether he will be sentenced to life without parole for the Oxford High School shooting in Michigan. The hearing is known as a Miller hearing and is being argued in Oakland County Judge Kwame Rowe's courtroom. The Miller hearing is necessary because of a 2012 Supreme Court ruling that prevents automatic life sentencing for minors. Crumbley pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder, 1 count of terrorism, 7 counts of assault with intent to murder, and 12 counts of possession of a firearm while in the commission of a felony after the November 30th, 2021 shooting. However, a judge cannot be sentenced until a judge considers his age since he is a teenager facing life in prison. Now, let me just add, this crime occurred very, very close to me. So I've been following it since the second it went live and people were notified of it. And let me just say, the way that he just randomly pled guilty to all of this stuff was very weird. And again, his parents are also being held in Oakland County Jail as we speak on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. I have a lot of opinions on his parents, the charges that they're being charged with, how they're being charged, but I'll save that for another video. Crumbley was 15 when he committed the shooting. Had he been an adult, he would have automatically been given a life sentence without parole. However, his age means certain factors must be considered before such a sentence is handed down. The judge will weigh factors such as Crumbley's age, life circumstances, and crime circumstances. This could take several days. After the Miller hearing is done, Rowe will announce his decision at a later date, and Crumbley's sentencing will be scheduled. Life sentences can be imposed on children despite a U.S. Supreme Court ruling in 2012 that prevents those kinds of punishments. However, a special hearing is first required. It enables juveniles with extreme sentences to argue why they should be allowed release back into society. Crumbley previously requested that the judge remove the life without parole possibility from his sentence, but Rowe declined. During opening statements, Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald said she agrees that minors should not be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but that Crumbley is an exception. This hearing is the most important legal proceeding of everyone here in this courtroom, McDonald said. Everyone is in this courtroom because he decided to kill 4 other people and take their lives instead of his own. McDonald cites who was killed and how it was done, saying that Ethan took joy in his actions. The way he walks up to them and fires at point-blank range, the way he takes shooter's stance to kill Tate Mir, she said, arguing that Ethan knew what he was doing when he planned the shooting. He decided in advance that he was not going to kill himself. He researched response times to make sure he surrendered before police arrived. He stayed alive to make sure he witnessed the suffering that he created. When the U.S. Supreme Court and Michigan Supreme Court talk about the rare case and the defendant sentenced to life, this is the one, Your Honor, McDonald said. Crumbley's attorney, Paulette Lofton, then delivered her opening statement, saying that the case of Miller versus Alabama requires the court to consider all matters surrounding what happened. The court has to consider mitigating circumstances. Those are chronological age, financial, and home environment, circumstances of the crimes, not facts, circumstances, incompetency associated with youth, and the possibility of rehabilitation, Lofton said. She went on to say that Ethan pleaded guilty to the charges and that the prosecution filed a motion to seek life without parole after the plea. Experts and witnesses that will come before you will not give you an excuse for Ethan's actions. They will give you an explanation for how Ethan ended up with a gun in his hand on November 30th, 2021, she said. At the end of the hearing, we will be asking for a term of years because it will be clear to you that Ethan Crumbley is not one of those rare juveniles that is irreparably corrupt and without the ability to be rehabilitated. The first witness to take the stand during the hearing is Oakland County Sheriff Lieutenant Tim Willis, who was one of the first to arrive at the shooting and was the officer in charge of the scene. Prosecutor Mark Keese called Willis to testify, leading him through evidence found in Crumbley's backpack, including the journal found in his belongings that detailed his plans to shoot up the school. On page 22, Willis testified, Crumbley said he wanted to shoot up the school and was going to buy a 9mm pistol. That was in early November. By the end of November, his parents bought him a 9mm Sig Saucer, which was used in the shooting. Willis said pictures that Crumbley posted on social media showed he knew how to hold and aim a gun. He has some knowledge, it appears, on how to handle firearms. Additionally, Willis read from a page in the journal that specifically detailed Ethan's plan that day. I will continue shooting people until police breach the building. Then I will surrender to them and plead guilty to life in prison, the journal read. Additionally, Crumbley wrote that he wanted to shoot a pretty girl in the back of the head, and the journal included a drawing of a girl with a gun pointed at the back of her head, and a drawing of the gun going off. The first victim has to be a pretty girl with a future, so she can suffer just like me, he wrote. Willis then testified that the first person shot was a pretty girl, and she was shot in the face. Keats then showed video from the shooting range from 4 days before the shooting, which showed Crumbley loading the gun in the range and firing multiple rounds. Willis said that this is evidence that Crumbley knew what he was doing, despite having just gotten the gun recently. The most interesting thing to me, he just bought this gun, so presumably this is one of the first times, if not the first time, he's fired this gun. He understands the basic concepts of shooting: two-hand grip, arms extended, bringing the sights up to your line of sight, Willis said. Ethan fired multiple rounds before his mom, Jennifer Crumbley, took a turn shooting the gun with the assistance of Ethan. The next video was from the range on September 25th, 2021, 2 months earlier. Ethan was at the range with his father, James, that day. James had a gun on his hip that day, believed to be his .22 caliber Cal-Tech pistol. The first to fire that day was Ethan with the Cal-Tech gun. On the video, nobody showed him how to fire that day as well, and Willis said it appears he was confident in his shooting. Ethan's journal complained about not having access to a 9mm, calling his dad's Cal-Tech punny. Willis said the difference between the two guns is stark, and that the 9mm is meant to cause more damage, and of the two was more likely to penetrate a classroom door. The most glaring difference is the size. The 9mm is a much larger round. It has more impact. It does more damage, he said. .22s are designed for target practice with paper and very small game, hunting, whereas the 9mm is essentially a combat round. Ethan's Google search then included how deadly is a 9mm pistol and how effective is a .22 caliber. He also Googled maximum sentences in Michigan, legal age of prison sentencing, Michigan Youth Correctional Facility, what prisons are in the state, has anyone been executed in Michigan, which states have the death penalty, a search regarding another shooter being sentenced to death and maximum death penalty, all a week before the shooting. Willis walked the prosecution through a graphic video, which was not shown, of Ethan torturing a bird to death. The details were extremely graphic, including Ethan breaking the legs and wings of the bird while recording the entire thing. He messaged a friend that he laughed the entire time, Willis said. The torture's disturbing enough. During cross-examination, Lofton honed in on the parenting of James and Jennifer. She questioned Willis about previous run-ins between the Crumbley parents and the neighbors, including neighbors who reported a lot of swearing, yelling, and Ethan being left home alone when he was a young child. Lofton said it appears that the Crumbley parents didn't have an interest in Ethan's education dating back to elementary school, which Willis agreed with. In 2021 and 2022, Ethan had C's, D's, and E's in his classes. Prior to that, in middle school, he had all A's and B's, Lofton said. She said this is evidence that Ethan wasn't a problem child in school. She then returned to the journal where she discussed many of Ethan's entries that included information about his loneliness and disinterest in classwork. I am genuinely surprised right now that none of my teachers have contacted my counselor or sent me to the office for not doing my work, he wrote. I just want to go back to the good days when I didn't have to worry in the world. Ethan said he would never feel the love of another human being as well. I will hate myself probably more than some people already do, he wrote. I sometimes even regret about doing the shooting. If I don't, then what is there for me? Lofton then pivoted to the parents, including how James and Jennifer discussed parenting their son, including that they were not any messages about noticing Ethan was more sad lately. Even during a meeting with the school on the day of the shooting, I believe Mr. Hopkins said he believed that there was a potential for suicidal ideation, Willis said. During that meeting, the parents declined to take Ethan home and both said they needed to return to work. Lofton asked
now, I
if
want to also add
there are any
fact
messages
that
where they discussed treating Ethan's mental illness. I don't recall any, Willis said. As for the guns Ethan shot at the firing range, they were all bought by James, Willis testified. After both the prosecution and defense were finished, the court took an hour-long break for lunch. So I'm going to just add a little bit of information here. Since I've watched the hearings on the parents, they did not care about Ethan whatsoever. He was actually reaching out to them. They would be gone at a horse range. They owned horses. They would be gone all the time at this horse barn. And there were multiple text messages from Ethan to his mother, basically letting her know that he is hallucinating, he's hearing things, he is locking himself in a closet, and she would just not respond and not come home until the next day, and then still not follow up on everything that was sent to her in the text messages. At around 1:30, Ronald Coatless, Oakland County Sheriff Crime Scene Supervisor, testified. He walked the court through several photos of the crime scene. Keats walked Coatless through several photos of the school, including bullet holes in doors, windows, and the bathroom in the school where Crumbley started shooting. Coatless testified the gun had been fired 32 times in the school. Crumbley's other attorney, Amy Hopp, then pointed out that Coatless did not have any knowledge about Crumbley, his age, or his mental competency. Detective Edward Wagrowski from the Oakland County Sheriff's Computer Crimes Unit was called by Keats next. He discussed what happened when he reviewed video of the shooting. Wagrowski testified it showed the shooter running through the hallway, shooting students, including Madison Baldwin, who was shot in the head. She was crouched into a fetal position when he came up to her and executed her, Keats said. Wagrowski confirmed that information and said she appeared to be doing her best to hide from him. Keats then walked Wagrowski through Crumbley's internet searches, which included searches about school shootings on the day of the shooting and in the weeks before the shooting. This includes the Parkland and Sandy Hook shootings. A video was then played in court, recorded by Crumbley, that was shot the day before the shooting. He says in the video, quote, "My name is Ethan Crumbley, aged 15, and I'm going to be the next school shooter," Crumbley said in the video, which was shot at 10:05 p.m. the night before the shooting. "The school I'm shooting up is Oxford High School. I'm in 10th grade there. I've always been fascinated by guns." In the recording, Crumbley said he wanted to be in SWAT as young as the 3rd grade and also had desires to be in the Marines or the Army. He went on to say that no one is safe, and that people were brainwashed, and that his shooting was for a cause. "When the bell rings at the end of 5th hour, I'm going to walk to the end of the dividend between the girls' and boys' bathrooms. I will walk behind someone and I will shoot a bullet into their skull. That's my first victim. I'm going to open fire on everyone in that hallway. I want to try to get as many people as I can. I will reload and I will find people hiding. I'm going to teach them a lesson of how they're wrong and how they're being brainwashed, he said. He also apologized to his parents for what he was about to do. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, he said. I'm ruining my life and not yours. Here is a portion of the audio that was played in court that day.
My name is Ethan Crumbley, aged 15, and I'm going to be the next school shooter. I thought about this a lot. I can't stop thinking about it. Like, it's constantly in my head. Every conversation I have with someone, no matter what, I'm thinking about it and I can't get it out. It's currently November 29th, 2021, 10:05 p.m. The school I'm shooting up is Oxford High School. I'm in 10th grade there. I've always been fascinated by guns when I was a kid. And I always wanted to join the forces, the SWAT when I was in 3rd grade, Navy SEALs when I was in 4th, Marines 5th or 7th, Army, Rangers. And I've never thought of a career. I've never had motivation. I kept lying to myself that there was something out there for me. There was something that was going to make me happy, that was going to provide me a happy, loving, caring life. But that's bullshit. It's all a lie. I realized that. Well, in 9th grade, I never thought of this. I thought I was going to make it through school and go into the army, but I realized, what's the fucking point? Millions have done it. Thousands have regretted it. Thousands have killed themselves because of it. Many come back and not happy, not satisfied. And I'm thinking, it's the only thing I want to go into, but how will it make me happy? How will I love doing that? How will I love? How will I... And I realized that that's not going to work out. So I was thinking, what am I going to do? And I realized all the bullshit that was right in front of me, and I never realized it. I was always the kid who said, work hard in school and you'll get a career in life. But the career is bullshit. And it was right in front of my fucking eyes the whole time. I couldn't see it. The school system is... Their main goal is to put youth just born into this world to learn. And they actually learn fucking good. They learn K for 5. They learn useful stuff. stuff about the world that teaches them not how the world is, but how it should be and how they want it to be. The teachers brainwash them into what they think is right, and their minds are so underdeveloped that the adults just take advantage of it. And they say that's too good for humanity. And when you get into middle school, that's even more useless. It's just an excuse to wait till the kids grow up. They're wasting years of their life learning knowledge they're most likely never going to do unless they become a Nobel Prize scientist or mathematician or the fucking founder of a multi-million-dollar environment club. And they're brainwashed. They're teaching a working class into this world.
The first teacher we heard from was Molly Darnell, who was shot that day. She was in room 224 near where Ethan started shooting. She testified that she noticed a rush of students running down the hallway and then an announcement from the school principal about the school going into lockdown. She said the pops sounded like lockers slamming, which they weren't using at the time. That combined with the lockdown announcement sent her into lockdown mode. This required the enabling of the night lock, a device intended to prevent the door from opening. She testified she believes that the night lock is in every classroom. I reached for the night lock, she said, but paused to make sure she was installing it correctly. I looked down for a second and noticed some movement. I looked and I locked eyes with someone dressed in baggy, oversized clothes. They were wearing a mask. I locked eyes, noticed some movement down below, and saw a gun moving up towards me. She said, noticed the gun didn't have an orange tip, which told her the gun was real. She said she jumped to her right because she believed she was going to be shot. The sounds sounded like a cap gun, Darnell said. I jumped to the right, felt my left shoulder move back, and it felt like someone had burned me with hot water. Darnell said she noticed her sweater was ripped and a bullet hole in the glass behind her. I remember thinking a BB gun couldn't do that, she said. At this stage, she still had not gotten the night lock installed, but was afraid to go back to the door. She tried to drag a large filing cabinet in front of the door, but it was too heavy. She ultimately dropped to her hands and knees and crawled over and put the night lock in, and then dragged a rolling cabinet in front of the door. At that time, I sent my husband a text message that just said active shooter, Darnell said. She said her husband just said to get safe, and that's when she saw blood and believes that's when she first realized she had been shot. She then messaged the school to confirm the shooter and then messaged her daughter, texting her that she was safe. She said she didn't message her other daughter, who is out of state, because she hoped to keep her safe for just a little bit longer. Darnell said she then called her husband and told him that she had been shot. He kept begging me to stop talking. He said, please, I don't want him to hear you, Darnell said. Another announcement went out about still being in lockdown, and Darnell said she started shaking while still hiding in the classroom. She said she started shaking uncontrollably, but didn't believe she needed help. It was 20 minutes, I would say, she said. I texted the teacher next door to me and said, I've been shot. She called 911, and there was another teacher in that room who texted our administration. A school administrator came to the door, and a few seconds later, officers were outside. She took out the night lock, opened the door, and the officers picked her up and walked her out of the school. For a few minutes, Darnell said she waited outside of the school before an ambulance arrived and took her to a Pontiac hospital, where she ultimately discovered to have been shot through part of her bicep with a through-and-through wound. She was treated and released at the hospital, but it was several weeks later before she realized that the gunshot would have hit her in her heart had she not dove to the right. She said she only saw photos of the door that she hid behind last week. Close to 2 years after the shooting, he was aiming to kill me, she said. The top shot was intended for my head, and the 2 bottom shots were intended for my chest. Darnell had planned to return to the school, but said it was too much to return to the work that she loved. Attorney Amy Hopp then cross-examined Darnell, which got a little bit heated at times, as she questioned Darnell about procedures about childhood trauma. Hopp's argument for the questioning is that it pertained to the Miller hearing. McDonald said Darnell is a victim. Rowe said that the questioning has not all been relevant to the Miller factors. Darnell was visibly shaken multiple times throughout the questioning, and when dismissed from the witness stand, McDonald walked away with her. The court was then dismissed and was to return the next day at 8:30 a.m. Now, I did put out the entire trial from the next day, which was this past Friday, if you want to watch that entire trial, which would be day 2. Court is to resume on Monday, tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. And I will either post the entire trial or I can just do a recap. I think the recap is better, but you guys can let me know in the comment section below what you guys prefer. Make sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. I'm curious what you guys think.